The views and opinions expressed in the following paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here are Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Hello and welcome to the program. It is Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert, and we are here for you this week, every week, to talk to you about taxes. And, oh, Jeff, everyone just reached to turn. Don't turn your radio off just yet. Hear me out.
Yes.
Do you, I'm talking to the listener right now, do you pay taxes?
Everybody's going, yes.
Yeah. And Jeff, everyone should be saying yes.
Yes.
Now, if there's one person that says, no, I don't.
There's a couple, but they've already paid their fair share. They're older. They've hit that threshold where they really don't have a lot of income coming in and their taxes are zero. They should be. They're older in age. They shouldn't be paying the tax rates that they paid their entire life.
But that's not the full story, because sometimes if your RMD kicks in, your required minimum distribution.
It gets uglier as time goes on. But most people that you talk to in mid-90s, unless they were very, very successful, they've started to kind of burn through that money. And I'll say maybe in the early 90s, they've spent their money.
Yeah.
So
if you're a teenager and you've got one job and you work at the hardware store like I did, you've got a pretty easy W-2. You pay taxes,
yes.
But you're probably going to get a refund because you're dependent and all that stuff. You're probably thinking, I don't have to listen to this show about taxes. I'm 17. Well, guess what, buddy? Time is coming.
You should.
Where you're going to have to worry about this stuff every single day. You know, it's called being an adult.
That's right.
And it's awful.
Time value of money. That's the hardest thing to explain to somebody that's in the early 20s to say put $50 a month away. Not a week, but a month.
I mean,
that $50 will equate to hundreds, if not thousands per month. Somebody else that waits until they're in their 30s, and says, "Oh, it's time to start putting money away."
I am that guy.
Yeah.
I switched careers in my late 20s, and I didn't get solid footing here at the radio station until my mid 30s, and I didn't start the savings. I'm working at a waiter. I'm getting cash. I'm blowing it.
That's right.
That
Never
night,
got cash.
Yeah. But I paid my taxes, and I didn't even think about socking money away because I was living for the minute.
That's right.
But God, I wish I could go back and just smack that kid.
That's right.
Not you, 17-year-old. Me when I was 28, and just kind of shake myself and say, look,
$50 a month.
Look at all this money you have. Just put 50 of it away.
Yep.
Every paycheck, every time I came home, I should have had I was going to say a jar, but I should have had a jar of, a savings account. A real one that makes money, a Roth or some sort of, whatever. I wish I would have had it. I don't. And now I kick myself. But here's the beauty of it, Jeff. Now I can take all that information and tell my son.
That's right.
All these things. And
he won't listen to you.
And he'll roll his eyes
he's probably
just
in his
like I did.
30s and say, wow, what's the old man know? He don't know nothing.
I'm going to grab him, when he's 17. I'm going to say, listen to me.
Yeah.
Listen to me. I could have been a millionaire at my age.
But
and now I'm about to go to work, so listen close.
Listen.
Save your money and get stuff set up ahead of time, because you want to be saving for the future so that I could be retired now.
The time value of money should be taught in junior high school.
The fourth grade.
Drilled in their heads all the way through junior high and high school, so that they come out, they go, wow, I just need to put just a little bit away. and they are 10 steps ahead of everybody else.
And one of the things that I'm going to talk about with you when we sit down, we haven't done it yet. It is mid-March almost. We haven't done it yet, but I'm going to bring my stuff in, and we're going to do a sit-down and talk about what happened last year, talk about how to plan for next year,
going
make sure
forward.
that because we always do this. We say doing your taxes in March and April, that's mostly just a recording.
Just recording history.
Of what happened last year.
Plugging in, there's a little tweaks you could do to help out, but not much. I mean, it's pretty much a done deal.
But I could say, hey, Jeff, we did an FSA last year. We saved $2,400.
Yes.
We kept that in our pay. That's real money that we kept.
Cash in your pocket.
Kept it from the government.
Yes.
Legally.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay with it. It's their tax code. They set
put it
up.
out there.
They put it out
Take
there.
it, use it to your advantage.
Take it, use it to your advantage. I'm going to say we kept $2,400. What can I do this year to make that number higher? And we can put that stuff into play as soon as we come up with the plan. And, going forward, I'll say, honey, there's $50 less in my paycheck, but it's going to end up.
It'll give you thousands back. Down the road, exactly.
So that's what you want to do this time of year. Yes, you want to do your taxes from last year, but you want to plan for next year, and all of that stuff happens now. It happens every 2 weeks. We just got paid.
Look at a paycheck.
Ding, ding.
Most people,
got paid.
when I say, hey, send me a paycheck stub, they're like, where do I get those?
Yeah, right. We still get them. It's direct deposit, but we get the paper ones.
Exactly. There's paper ones, and then most of them are online. Nobody pays attention to it. And again, it's never been brought up to say, look at your paycheck stub. Just analyze it. You don't have to go through and do the math on it. Just look at it and go, okay.
Yep. So this is stuff that you can do now for next year's Josh to say, gosh, I'm glad last year's Josh.
They say thank you.
Put all this stuff in play, because instead of $2,400 that we kept, we're going to keep $3,000.
Exactly.
Or $3,400.
That's right.
Or
that's all you're trying to do.
10,000.
Yeah, well, it'd be all right.
Maybe
little tricky on that sometimes.
Maybe we can get. I'm not greedy. I just want to keep 10,000 of my money from the government. Now, there are things that we can go online and look up to see where my refund is at.
Yes.
So if we have already filed our taxes.
Your tax return's been e-filed. If it's been mailed in, say a prayer. Let's talk maybe
a couple
June.
of our fathers.
But if it's e-filed, typically we e-file Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Just do it, every 3 days throughout the week. So,
and to clarify, the government doesn't want you to send them anything in the mail.
They really don't, but there are a few situations where you're forced to.
You kind of have to.
In the event of a death of somebody, and you're the beneficiary, and you're claiming their refund, has to be mailed in. Amended returns, unfortunately, Missouri have to be mailed in. Those are the two that, in the past, I'll admit we were a little lax. We'd mail it in and just kind of go, somebody will hopefully attack it. Now we mail it, we record it, we send it where it's return receipt out of our office. We don't give it to clients. We'll have them come sign it. We'll ship it, strictly because the time clock starts ticking and we're like, come on. 3 months later, it's still not addressed.
And we've seen the pictures of the IRS location down in Texas. We've seen the pictures, Kansas City, Utah. And we've seen the pictures, and there's just boxes and boxes of paperwork all over their lunchroom tables. I don't even know where these people have lunch, because
they're working remote for the biggest part of that, honestly. But they're being pulled back in. IRS pulled back. I forget how many people they said that were forced to go back into the office.
If I mail something to the IRS, a person on the other end has to open it
in the mail room.
Look at
it. And they have to hand it to somebody.
Can you imagine the headache, logistically, of how long that would take?
Well, the funny part is there was a guy from some right out central Missouri or something like that, who invented they still have them in the 60s, the prototype for the desk for the IRS. So it's not a standard desk that we think of. He built it out of plywood, and apparently they ran with it, but they still use it to today. And it has cubby holes all like on a semicircle with cubby holes all in it. So when somebody walks up with a tax return, they can tear sections of it apart and put each section in the cubby hole, and then they work their way through that. And it's the 60s technology that was still at the IRS today, which is scary.
But if you e-file, they are at least, to
computer
their credit.
Computer picks it up literally within, typically, I'll say no more than 2 weeks, your return shot right to your bank account.
And, the computer picks it up, does your numbers match our numbers?
Mm-hmm.
If it does, boom. And
thank you, and it's off its way.
When we e-filed last year, it took a little longer, but you warned us that it was going to. But the year before that, we e-filed, and I think within a week and a half, we had already gotten a return.
The farther that we get, we're really not – I'll say we're getting to the thick of it now. But the next couple of weeks, if you file, it's going to drag it out a little bit longer just because of the flow that's hitting the IRS. Mm-hmm. But again, where's my refund? That is very prevalent. Watch it. People hawk it. I mean, literally every day go in there. You can go to our website, upper right-hand side at CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.
Yep.
It says – a button says, where's my refund? Open it. It'll give you IRS, state of Missouri, state of Illinois, and you just click the button. You need your tax return with you because you need to put your
put numbers in there.
Social Security number. You have to how you filed and what your actual to $1 refund should be. And then it'll pop up and it'll say, hey, we're working on it. It's in process. Some of them, once it's done, it'll be, hey, the money will be in your account on, March 30th, something of that effect.
And that's something that if you already e-filed, you can go out to CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com, click on the button, where's my refund, and it can redirect you to whichever you need to go to, state of Missouri, state of Illinois, IRS, the federal government.
States are typically faster than the IRS by a couple of days. So
by a couple of days.
State return comes in way faster than what you think it does. Just state way more efficient. And again, you got to say there's only X number of people in the state of Missouri, X number of people in Illinois, versus the IRS is everybody combined.
Couple of exceptions where you would have to mail in a tax return, and like Jeff said, amended tax returns. And you don't want to do an amended return. You want to get it right the first time.
Get it right first time. But there are stuff. I mean, we have one. So I dropped something off just yesterday. And they're like, "Oops, sorry, got this little, $4,000 1099."
Oh, I forgot about this
but
one.
It wasn't. It was mailed late. Wasn't on the return.
Yeah,
we got to amend it.
Got to amend it. So you got to mail that in. Death and beneficiaries.
Yeah,
if you have that situation going on.
Which again, if anybody has that situation going on, be extremely patient in the process. IRS thinks it's fraud. They're going to make you jump through hoops and drag it out forever.
So if somebody died last year in October, you still file a tax return?
Still have to file their final tax return. And then if they get a refund, so say they overpaid their taxes and they get a refund, then whoever is the trustee or the next of kin literally is then responsible to get that refund sent to them.
I have never even thought about that.
Yes, and it's a nightmare because in the past it would pop in, pop out. They never had an issue. Apparently, IRS had a huge fraud on this. So literally there's this form. It's called a 1310. Not that I've been down this path 100 times. And a Form 50. And if you do the 1310 on the tax return, the responsible party has to sign off. You have to mail it in. Then they come back and they ask basically, hey, do you have, power of attorney? Can you really do this? And it just gets stupid. And you're usually talking $400 refund to, I think the biggest one we had out there at one point in time was like $2,300.
That's real money.
Which I don't think they ever really got their $2,300 yet because it's still in this goofy process going back and forth.
But it's not part of my tax return.
No.
I'm still doing my married filing jointly with me and my wife.
It's the individual that passed away. They're filing from January 1 to date of death.
I can wait.
Yeah.
Because it's not holding up my tax return.
Yeah, not at all.
And, it's not like I hate to sound glib, but it's not like mom and dad are going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can wait for this process to happen, but that is a nightmare on top of everything that you've just lost in a loved one.
Exactly.
But it's just and then is to safeguard the fact that we can't just keep filing tax returns for dead people.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, and they're very, like I said, they're very liberal in the past. Pre-COVID, they were very liberal. Or maybe they were able to prove it, figure it out, and shoot a check back out. But it just seems like these things are, and you're talking, you really want to walk away from $200 refund at the end of the day, and you're like, no, I'll fight them for it. But there's that time frame comes into play, and you're just come on.
Right. What does the government do with unclaimed?
Technically, it sits in for your benefit. Whose ever money it is, it sits out there in unclaimed properties.
And then eventually, the Attorney General
will pick
of
it up
the state
for
of
the
Missouri
state.
will say, "Hey, so we should be putting Grandma's name in every once in a while."
Exactly. We'll do it.
See.
I think my grandmother had $62 that was left in a checking account, and we were talking 18, 20 years ago. And we filled all kinds of paperwork out, and then got to the point where it wasn't even worth chasing the $62 for what we had to go through. So we just walked away. Mm-hmm. So you leave it, and then eventually, at some point, I don't know what the time frame is.
What was her name and Social Security number?
Good luck trying.
Yeah. So that probably ends up in the unclaimed, and I wonder if that sits in an account that grows money?
It sits in
I would hope.
Apparently, every once in a while, you'll see commercials ran by the state of Missouri, and they're like, hey, unclaimed property, come get it.
I always put my name in, but I never think to put Grandma's name in.
Yeah, put it in there. So you'll probably be amazed at what pops up.
Right.
But it was like, they won't tell you. It's over $10 or over $25, but less than $1,000.
Oh, my wife got one that said it was over 50, and we're like, oh, maybe this is the big one, and it was like 52.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works. I never realized that.
Yeah.
But if you did put in your e-file, which is
straight through,
do everything you possibly can to e-file.
Everything.
Because like I said, a week and a half later, we got our tax return.
And again, there was another one that we just saw a week or so ago that was handwritten. And no offense, they had all good intentions, but they missed some numbers being transferred to the next form. Mm-hmm. And they were handwriting it.
If someone handwrites their refund and they go to put it in the slot, if they think twice, they pull it back out and they say, I'm going to give this to Jeff. Can you take all of their numbers?
I'd take their numbers and start keying, and then that's how it happened. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, you're not entitled to that.
And not only did you catch the mistakes, but you e-filed for them, and they got to avoid the whole 1960s desk where
where it goes to different pieces, and unfortunately they owe some of what they got back in a refund back, but that's okay. Yeah. At least it's caught. They caught it first, so they fessed up versus IRS coming after them, going, "Hey, we sent you this refund, and you're not entitled to it. You owe it back now."
You dinged up.
Yeah.
Now you're in the queue. Where's my refund? You can find that button on CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. That's the Capital Advisory Group website. And then what do we want to know before we go to commercial break? What do we want to know about PIN numbers?
PIN numbers. So I get the comment. So we key the returns. We go to e-file. It rejects it and comes back and says, hey, either both spouses or one of them has a PIN number that was issued by the IRS. 6-digit code. We don't get copies of it. Your preparer does not get copies of it. It's sent to you and you only. So make sure that you give those codes to your preparer. Just makes everybody's life a little bit simpler. And if you haven't gotten one yet, don't panic. There is an 800 number that you can call to retrieve it. So if they say, oh, your preparer calls you and says you owe me a PIN number, and you go, I never got one in the mail, it might not have been mailed to you. But there's one issued every year, a new one issued every January.
So if I started this PIN number business, which you recommend?
I recommend it because you need the PIN number, your Social Security number on your tax return before it goes through.
Because otherwise, you're more open to fraud.
Or somebody beats you to the punch and files a tax return in your name, which gets tricky on backing it out. and then you got to go through all this letter writing campaign to do what they call a duplicate tax return, which you're saying, hey, it's really me. Somebody else stole my identity.
I'd love it if he paid my taxes, but
no,
he's
they usually get huge refunds.
Going for my refund. So if you've got a PIN number or you've had one in the past, there's a number you can call to retrieve it, or you have it. Is it different every year?
Different every year. New one is issued for every tax year going forward.
So I guess the question is, honey, did we do a PIN number last year? Would you know, like if I asked you?
We go back and look. I could look at the previous year's return and say, hey, you had one. You should have one this year. They're going to give
you another one.
And if you say, well, I never showed up in the mail, or I misplaced it, whatever the case may be, we'll give you this 800 number. You go chase it down and get it back. But you need that to file the return.
Yep.
And then midsummer, I wouldn't mess with it now because you won't get it in time, but request one. You can go on the IRS.gov site, go to PIN number, request one, but don't do it now.
Yeah.
It'll never make it to you in time to file your return.
All right, but you want to do it because it will protect you from fraud going forward.
It's like what do they call that, two-factor authorization. So if you log into a site and it shoots you the 6-digit code, you need to type that in to get in. The IRS just issues you one every January.
All right.
So,
your number, 636-394-5524, 636-394-5524. I learn something new every time we do this show, and I just realized that if someone passes away, they still have a tax return.
Yes.
For, if October, they still got a 10-month tax return. To get money back and all that stuff.
And our pay. The state could owe money. So unfortunately, somebody's going to have to write a check to settle up with the IRS. So
636-394-5524 is the number to give Jeff a call. It's tax season, so he's pretty busy. But if you need your taxes done, there's always room. Give Jeff a call, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group, 636-394-5524. And if you've already e-filed and you want to know where's my tax return, where's my refund, is it in transit, what are we doing? Give Jeff a call and go to the website, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. There's a button, say, where's my refund? You click on it. It'll redirect you to the state and to the federal government. And you can always call Jeff with any questions at all, 636-394-5524.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the show, back to Keep What's Yours. Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group, is here. And we're going to get into some of the things. What should I be asking my tax preparer? And if they're not saying these things to you, you probably need a new one.
Yeah. Again, because they're just simply preparing your return, throw it in front of you. Thanks. This is what you owe. This is what you get back. Have a nice day.
My uncle, God love him, he works during this time of year for one of the big tax preparer. You see the commercials.
Does he now? I didn't know that. We might send his resume over.
Yeah. So he's retired.
It's okay. That's perfect. They work tax season, take off, do their thing.
He's got plenty of time. But the thing is, when I go and give him my stuff, which is what I used to do, he would do it at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't really ask me any questions.
Yeah.
He wouldn't say, do you have an FSA? Do you have an HSA? What are you doing with this? Do you have medical bills? He didn't really ask me these questions because he was just, boom, 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 whatever number here, stamp this.
Yep. Whatever you give them, they run with. So the biggest thing would be straight up, is there anything I could do today to help reduce my taxes? Yeah. And just shut up and see what they say.
And going forward.
Just point blank, because like I said, there are things that can be done. An HSA, you can make a contribution to an HSA all the way up to March 15th. So we're kind of skidding up to that, the wall in a sense. But let's say that you have an HSA. We typically see HSAs where the employer may put $500 in for you, and then the employee just doesn't put anything else. They just don't know that they can do that. So we do the tax return. There's a code W on your W-2 that signifies basically you have an HSA. And then you go into the tax return, and remember, it is dollar for dollar. So if it's like an IRA, you put an extra $1,000 in, it's going to reduce your taxable income. You pay less tax. That's an easy one right there. So you could actually write a check today to shore up your HSA, and it's depending if it's single or family. There's two totally different numbers. And you can take a deduction.
If I don't use it all in the calendar year,
HSA rolls forward.
It does.
Forever and ever and ever and ever. So the concept on the HSA is like an IRA, pre-tax deduction.
Even the stuff that my company puts in?
Yeah.
It'll roll forward.
So the theory is a lot of people are afraid of an HSA, and they're like, oh, I lose it. No, you don't. That's the FSA on the medical side. So like what you're doing, if you don't use your money for either health care or schooling, daycare, you lose it. But you're going to spend that
and more.
A bunch more.
Trust me. And more.
Exactly. But an HSA goes on forever. And the concept is again, when it was originally designed, it was to make a choosy consumer, if you want to call it that, from healthcare, where you would actually negotiate your own healthcare prices. And nobody, if you go to an emergency room, you don't care what it could be. They could put a bill in front of you for $1 million. You're going to sign it because you want to be fixed. Mm-hmm. So I agree with it as checkup and your well visits. But in the big scope of the stuff, you could care less what the bill is if you're drug into an emergency room. But the theory was the HSA you could use an HSA to pay for your Medicare premiums up to 65. Well, you could use it for even if you're not employed at that place anymore. So it's kind of a cool scenario as you go forward.
And that's an option.
Yeah.
And just go to your tax preparer, whether it's my uncle who's doing it from the kitchen table on the side, or it's a firm or a big house, or
typically we get the nobody says a word when they get a refund. Mm-hmm. Unless they're accustomed to getting a huge refund and it's lower. And then they're like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? But typically we get yelled at when they owe money. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, you screwed my tax return up. There's got to be something wrong that you missed. But the problem is something changed that previous year. Could be a subtle, maybe you changed jobs. But again, concept.
That's not subtle.
Well, I mean, I say subtle because
Sure.
you're just, maybe you mess with your W-4. We've seen it where people mess with their own W-4s, which are the withholding. On the federal state, had nothing withheld. Never paid attention to it.
On accident.
It was an accident. It was a true because they about fell out of the chair when I told them what they owed because they had no tax withheld for 7 months. There's no going back to the IRS and going, hey, do-over, you owe the tax, period. So that's why I say stuff like that are blatant, in your face, easy fixes. But it's more so what could you do today to reduce your taxes on the return that's being prepared, and what can I do going forward next year?
For next year.
And what you'll see is a lot of people won't go down that path.
I got to tell you, if I went to my uncle and he's trying to stamp the envelope and get it, and we're all done here, and I said, what can I do to reduce my taxes going forward? He'd lean back in his chair and go, oh, man. Put a pot of coffee on, because they don't want to get too deep into it with you.
Some are afraid.
I'm just, I get up and leave and someone else sits down.
Exactly. Somebody, the first thing is they're afraid they could be wrong. Again, the concept is we have enough software and enough knowledge to put the numbers together, and I'm the first one you're going to yell at if it's not right. Yeah. Honestly, I get that. So that's where we kind of back into those numbers and make sure they're right.
And for the guy who's fly-by-night, does this on the side to make a little extra money during tax season, he's not going to know the tax code the way you do. He's not going to want to sit down with me the way that you will.
Yes.
And do all this stuff. So if you're going to one of those people, God love them, they crank these things out.
Exactly.
But they're not going to be able to sit down and do what Jeff does and say, you need to put more into your IRA. You need to put more into an HSA. Just talking to you told me what an FSA was. Mm-hmm. We're using it. We're saving $2,400 a year.
Exactly.
I mean, that my uncle would have never suggested that.
Yeah.
Even though it's a tool that he had, whether he knew about it or not, it's a tool out there to my disposal.
Exactly.
And if I'm not using it, then I'm just giving the government
more money.
$2,400.
Yep.
Who could use that money more? Me and my family and fingers crossed, trip to Disney. Or
hey, the report the other day, it now costs $100 more a day to go to Disney. It was out a couple weeks ago.
I saw that. Magic Kingdom's now $25 more a ticket.
That's it. Parking was maybe another 20, another 10 or 15 for parking.
My wife's like, well, if we stay on the resort, we don't have to pay for parking.
And that costs an extra $2,000.
I'm going to run these numbers past Jeff and see if we're actually saving money by staying.
No, I'm the worst because when we went crazy for 5 days.
Yeah, and then what'd you do afterwards? Oh my God!
I looked at it going, what were we thinking? Yeah.
Can we go to Disney again? No.
No, that topic came up, and I was like, no, you guys are old. Take your own kids.
Yeah, exactly. Can you take us to Disney? But me having an extra $1,200, an extra $2,400, that's going to make that more of a reality.
Exactly.
Than if I just let the government take that.
Yes. And again, the concept, which we find funny, but it's more psychology, tax savings that you can touch are more realistic than just seeing it on a piece of paper going, oh, you saved $500. And everybody goes, who cares?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, $500 is It's $500.
It's $500, believe me, but you don't get the full effect of it, and I can see that in people's eyes.
Because I don't have a $500 bill in my hand?
Exactly, because you don't have the cash in hand, or be able to go, hey, look at that, it's a giant refund. You know, when they get giant refunds, everybody's happy, you know, ha, 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 you know.
But throughout the year, this $2,400 that I keep, this $2,400 in the FSA, that is something that is every paycheck is being saved. A little bit here, a little bit there, and that's the concept. There's no one magic, bullet you're going to wave a wand and go, oh, you saved $10,000. Right.
Doesn't exist. It is a series of maybe in some cases 3 things that you do, and in some cases a dozen things that go on behind the scenes, and it's what helps.
But it all adds up,
yes.
And you might say, do you want to save $500 a year? Sure. Well, these are the things you have to do.
Yeah, and then most people go, huh?
Is it a check for $500? No. It stays on your paycheck rather than going to the government. It stays on. You get $500 spread out over 26 paychecks.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, $25 a check or something like that, and they're like, what?
then don't complain about paying taxes.
Exactly.
Because you have the opportunity right now to keep more of what's yours, and it's, do you want to do it or not?
Yeah.
Is your tax preparer telling you about it?
Well, and a lot of people,
not?
like a ton of people that show up that are new, say, no one has ever explained this to me.
That's
and it's
right.
like, I get it.
So what you would be asking our tax guy, you said show up and say, can I be saving more money?
Yeah.
And then stop and wait and see what they say.
Just wait and see what the response is. And if they say, well, and don't really give you an answer, or they may come out and be completely honest and say, we don't do that. We just prepare your return.
We just, put the stamp on an e-file.
Call it a day.
Okay. So
if they don't, then call us, because that's what we do is the preparation of the tax return. Within the prep of the return, we're trying to look for what strategies. And like I said, this time of the year, there's really not much handful of things you could do to help, but it's really this is what you need going forward.
What can we do for next year?
Yes.
To make sure that, I save some Disney money.
Yeah. And then the other thing is if you think you're close to itemizing, the question, and we always take it as they're trying to scam us, but what would it take for me to itemize? And so a lot of people take a lot of what's called non-cash contributions. You're always cleaning your garage out. You're always cleaning your basement out. You take it to Goodwill, drop it off. They give you the goofy little receipt that's empty, by the way. There's nothing written on it, which if you read the IRS code, that's illegal as can be, but they do it all the time.
They have to put it, they have to look at my stuff and give you
basically
a dollar
saying
amount.
that it should be filled out. Mm-hmm. Can't have a blank one floating around. But again, then you could take all that stuff because people, we take it as they're going to come back and say, whoa, I got, we go, oh, you need $4,200 to be able to itemize. And then mysteriously the next morning, $4,300 worth of receipts, or numbers show up. But again, and a lot of people have that stuff, they just go, I don't feel like adding it up. And I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. Because over the years they've added this junk up. It went nowhere. And they took standard deduction. But again, that's the nexus. What do you need? Because you could probably go back and go, hey, I got these receipts that I just tossed in the, threw it in that junk drawer in the kitchen, never really worried about it because I didn't think I could ever have that deduction. So.
But what are some – give me some examples of things that we didn't realize we could be using to maybe add up to hitting that deductions.
So if you're older, from a medical standpoint, all the different crazy medical deductions that you can take.
What crazy medical deductions are out there that we don't even know about?
Well, the easy ones would basically be as you go forward, if your medical miles is probably the easiest one. So
driving to and from
doctors, hospitals, going to pick up a prescription, anything that is medically unreimbursed that you pay out of pocket but is a necessity, you get to take as a deduction.
And does that? I mean, we've talked about business miles before, and there's an app out there that can help you track them.
Mm-hmm.
You make a trip, and it says, was this a business trip? Yeah. You swipe right. Is this not? You swipe left.
You could hypothetically use that. It's called MyERCToday. If you want the discount code, shoot us an email, call us. I'll shoot you the little form. It's $50 a year, but if it literally tracks you everywhere you go. So if you went to the pharmacy, you'd go, hey, that's for our medical. Same concept. This is personal versus business.
But listen to this. My mom goes to physical therapy. Every time I call her, Finn's sick. That's my son. Or, we need someone to watch Finn. Or I need this, I need that. She's like, well, I've got therapy today. She's got physical therapy. And every time I call, well, I've got physical therapy today. I'm like, how often are you going? She goes 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's 3 trips there and back.
Exactly.
And how much per mile?
Getting rate running for 2023 is 22 cents a mile.
That adds up.
It does. So, and we see people that have medical expenses, but they have no medical miles. And we're like, hey, how often did you go? And they're like, a bunch.
Is there any way to go back?
Well, you don't want to.
Year?
And you got to be very careful on that because you need to track it. And typically, if somebody comes in and sits with us and we say, do you have medical miles? And they go, huh? No, I could write that off. The problem is they're recreating something that's not probably realistic.
Yeah.
So be very, very careful.
I mean, can you say, I'm getting into that gray area of scheming here. Can you say, well, I went 3 times a week every day last year?
But could you prove it? The IRS says that
I skipped this week.
Exactly.
And I didn't end up going that week. I can't just say 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I need to have something.
Or I get a lot of the times I go, well, it's the same as last year.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because you didn't go on the same days. It's impossible.
I remember that week you went on vacation.
And you didn't go. But medical miles. So if you go to see your doctor, if you go to the hospital, if you go for checkups, if you're going to get prescriptions, all that stuff, it all is medical miles. Mm-hmm. So that's something that adds up. A lot of people don't pay attention to it. And then when you get into these weird things like doctors, dentists, getting glasses, chiropractor, medical professionals, hospital stays, all that good stuff.
Hearing aids?
Hearing aids count. The one that I was unaware of was vitro and fertilization counts as a medical expense. I was like, you got an adoption expense or deduction.
Of course
but you got this one.
Right?
Yeah, it's a medical expense. And then basically the funny is like the alcoholism, drug use. If you go to rehab, it's medical.
Is it really?
Yes. So all that stuff's out there where a lot of people –
you can use that to add up for itemization.
Yes, which probably in one of those you'd really quickly hit that schedule. Smoking cessation programs, nutritional counseling. It has to be a doctor diagnosed or have a doctor letter, and it's deductible. The only thing is like
weight loss programs?
Weight loss.
Works?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's weight loss, but most of the food or the supplements and stuff like that don't count.
Oh, if I buy the meals.
You can't write those off. But your cost to go see them, to work with that, as long as a doctor has said, hey, you need to do that.
And this is where things get tricky for the layperson like me. I asked you last week about deductions, itemized deductions. This is where it gets tough. If I don't meet the threshold of married filing jointly of 30. I need to hit $30,000 to itemize or something.
28,000 and then 30, and between 28 and 30ish, depending upon age.
If I don't hit it, do I get anything for those medical miles of driving to and from therapy? Have to
itemize.
If I don't hit the threshold, then all of this stuff is just
it was in poof. Good effort. And unfortunately, a lot of people then get mad and they're like, "Well, I added all that up." You don't know until you add it up to see where you're at.
Right.
So again, it's an exercise. I'll say 60% of the time, it's an exercise that results in zero. You don't make the cut.
But you got to try it.
Got to try.
You got to see what's out there.
Especially if you're going to the doctor a lot, and you give to charities. You've given what's called non-cash.
What about my prescriptions every year?
Is whatever your copay is, you get to deduct that.
Not the prescription.
Not the prescription itself.
Yeah.
Because if medical's paying $80 and you got to pay $20,
I was going to say some drugs I'm on, just that'll kick me into itemization.
Oh no, there's some stuff that crazy amounts from that's a whole nother topic on the pharmacy.
What was that EpiPen story? It was like $40,000 for one shot.
Yeah. And you go, what?
Yeah.
There's people that have leukemia that have to take a $22,000 a month shot.
Wow.
And you go, ooh, it should show up on a silver platter. Should be gold, and it's just a plastic shot. I mean, nothing. You're like, yep, you're done. Boom. So
that was $20,000, huh?
Yeah.
But your copays count.
Yes.
Okay. So this is really interesting. A lot of people, when they get older, I'm going to talk to my mom.
Go to the doctor a lot.
How much do you think you got in medical?
And the trick is maybe you don't get it like from a premium standpoint. So if you pay for supplements, you're on Medicare and you have Part A and B or Part of, but you have Program C, D, E, and F, you don't really get a deduction on the federal side, but you actually get a deduction on the state side for your medical premiums paid.
Is it easier to hit itemized deductions on the state side?
Yes, way easier.
Way easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's the state of Missouri, especially the state of Missouri, used to be a 3-page document. It was pretty easy to read through. Typically, you're at a dozen. You're actually more pages for the state than you are for the feds.
So do me a favor. Go to your tax preparer now. If you're not using Jeff Zufall, go to your tax preparer now and just ask them. Say, do I meet the threshold for itemizing with all of my medical deductions?
Yes.
And if they say, go to a new tax guy. Give Jeff a call, and he can help you out. Because if you don't do the numbers, you could be leaving money on the table.
Lots of money on the table.
And that's not money on the table. You could be giving the federal government more of what's yours.
Yes.
And again, who deserves that money more, you or them?
Yeah, that's an easy one.
I'll answer that for you. You do. So another thing that you can add to your list of things to talk to your tax preparer about, what about my medical? Is that enough to itemize? And if they don't want to sit down and crunch the numbers for you, find a new guy that will. That person's Jeff Zufall. 636-394-5524. 636-394-5524. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. And if your tax preparer is like my uncle and they say, oh, God, you're going to make me do this. Jeff wants to do this. This is what they do every day. 636-394-5524. We'll be back to close out this show right after this.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the show, back to Keep What's Yours. One more segment just really quickly to tell you that debt collection firms are now taking on IRS. If you owe taxes, they might have pawned you off on a debt collection firm.
So if you get a weird envelope in the mail one day from a company which is CBE Group, Conserve, or Coast Professional, they are debt collectors for the IRS. So 2021, 22, the IRS shut down all collections. I mean, literally didn't send out notices.
Pandemic stuff, right?
Pandemic stuff. Just shut everything down. They're alive now, and they're back in business. They're starting to kick this stuff up. So this actually says if you have a debt of $5,000 or less, so this could be something from Maybe you owed interest from 2019 that's just raising its head today. It's been hidden this whole time. The odds are they're going to kick it off to debt collector, and you have to address the issue going forward. Don't blow it off. It's not junk mail. They're not fishing. It's the real deal.
Are they going to kill my credit?
No, they won't kill your credit by no means. Because, again, even if they file a lien against you, the lien really doesn't go against your credit report. They fixed that maybe 5-6 years ago. But it's one of these, what they call it, non-public companies that will hold that to the side. So it still shows from a credit standpoint, but it's not a direct hit to your credit report
Is
anymore.
the juice running on it?
Oh, yeah. It's interest, everything rolling as you go forward. So what they're saying is this is 2017. They kind of started using this. And they say that this year they will pass on 2 million individual accounts each year over to the debt collectors. And they're saying it's $5,000 or less. So if it's a weird – I mean, we get this stuff all the time where 2019 they say, oh, you had a $210 penalty out there. We're like, well, where's the original notice? There isn't one because I never issued one. It was through COVID.
Okay.
So – but if you don't pay it –
But they can still go back and –
Oh, yeah. Believe me, they
your
will.
IRS bill has no statute of
There's
limitations.
no.
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh, if you don't pay it in 7 years, it just disappears and goes off your record.
Not the case.
Not the case. They will hunt you to the edge of the earth for $5.
Oh, yay.
Seriously. But again, so if you get one of those in the mail, get it over to us, and then we'll do the research going backwards to figure out where did it really come from. Because there's stuff that happened through 19, 20, 21, through the COVID era, that they never even sent a notice out to you. Just appears out of thin air. So
Was
you have
the juice running that whole time?
hypothetically. But remember, 2021, if you owed the IRS money, they are waiving all penalties and interest for you.
Okay.
But you have to step up to the plate and say,
And address it.
hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not blow it off and say, oh, well, it's not starting until 22.
Can we ask for forgiveness for these things?
Yes, there's a one out. So if you have a tax bill and it's just I shouldn't say phenomenal, but it's rather low, and you haven't asked for forgiveness in the past, you can have them waive it.
Okay.
But remember, it's a one out.
One time.
So use it when you really need
it. Okay, and I can call you and ask you and say, hey, I got $1,200. Should I take my mulligan?
Exactly.
And you can say, man, maybe just pay
Depends
it.
upon the circumstances, but you get if they accept it, you get a letter that says, hey, we're only doing this because you have a good payment history. You've never asked for forgiveness in the past. And then I have other people that we've tried it and they get rejected, and they get rejected because they've asked every year.
Yeah, right.
And the IRS is not going to fall for it. They can look at the history. And
Shame on us.
Yes.
Now shame on you.
Yeah.
636-394-5524. Give Jeff a call if you did you receive one of these letters. Jeff can help you navigate that process. 636-394-5524. And then if you're looking for your refund, you've already e-filed and you're like, hey, it's been a couple weeks. Where's my refund? You can go to CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com, and there's a button that says, where's my refund?
Yes.
And that'll redirect you to the state of Missouri, state of Illinois, to the federal government,
Yes.
redirect you, and try to track down where your refund is. You can do that as well. Gosh, it's that time of year, I guess. It's the where's my refund
Yes.
time of year. So you can your baseball's starting.
That's right.
Jeff is doing taxes, and we're on the hunt for our refund. Boy, I feel like we were just here last year. Thank you, Jeff.
You betcha. Thank you.
636-394-5524. Talk to your tax person. Talk to your tax preparer. Ask them some of these questions about medical. Do I hit the itemization threshold? Ask them about, hey, can I put my medical miles down?
Yeah.
And if they say that, if they go like this, you need to find a new tax preparer. Give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524. Jeff, we'll see you next week.
You betcha.
You've been listening to Keep What's Yours with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Manager at Capital Advisory Group. To learn more, call 636-394-5524 or visit CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. The views and opinions expressed in the preceding paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners.